On this video, I'm going to show you how you can analyze different markets to pick the perfect one for you. Whether you're expanding into another market or you're just getting started in wholesaling or flipping real estate, this video is going to help you find that market, analyze that market, and pick the right one to go into where you can make a ton of money there.
Welcome to the 5-day marketing blueprint challenge. The first thing I want to answer is, what will I get from this 5-day challenge? You guys are here, you're going to take an hour with me each day over the next 5 days. What are you going to get from this, right? And ultimately at the end of this, I want you to be able to build out your marketing blueprint to go forward and talk and deal with motivated sellers. So how can you market to find more motivated sellers if you're already marketing, or how can you get started? So if you're just beginning, this is going to be a great 5 days for you to build out your blueprint. And if you guys are already doing this, you're going to find things along the way that I might teach or talk about that can better your marketing and your plan and make it more effective. And then if you guys are at a very large scale and potentially looking to go somewhere else into some virtual markets or some different places where you can market, this will be a great way for you to figure out your next market to go into if you follow along over these next 5 days. So if you guys are on with me live, that's awesome. I love it. And if you're watching the recording and the replay, that's okay too. Just make sure that you execute all of these things. I'm going to give you guys some homework. I'm going to give you guys some things to do and keep up with it, okay? I just finished writing this book, 7-Figure Flipping Underground. There's been a lot of people posting about it on social media. I gave out about 200 unedited advanced copies to all of our mastermind members. And what I did was I told the team we should go through a lot of this on a challenge or something like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to work through some chapters of this book. And it really is the backbone of everything that I've done over the past 6 or 7 years. So what I want to do, and this is kind of like what we're going to do today, and we're going to be talking about analyzing the market. But I want to read a story and tell you why I did this challenge. So this is chapter 7. Chapter 7 of this book is called Choose Your Market. After I speak at Flip Hacking Live each year, I have a strange recurring conversation with investors. No matter the town, city, or state, it always goes exactly the same. It starts with an attendee saying, "Great presentation, I loved it. It's too bad none of that stuff you talked about will work in my market." You guys ever feel like that? The first time I heard this, I was confused. Why do you say that? I'm in New York. These strategies don't work here. They're too expensive. The market is too expensive and it's too competitive. Well, I've never invested in New York. It could be different, I guess. The attendee continued. "If I was in a smaller market, I'm sure I could get all the deals that I wanted." This single encounter wasn't all that weird until a few minutes later when another attendee approached and said, "Thanks for the tips, but they won't work in my market. Let me guess, your market is..." And he said, "It's too small." And I replied, "Wait, too small? I don't understand." "Yeah, if I were in a market like New York or California, I'm sure these strategies would work, but there just aren't any deals where I live. Flippers and wholesalers fly all around the country to join us at this 3-day event where top real estate investors perform and do their business so they can hack the pros, but it never fails. The excuses run rampant when I ask why these attendees aren't doing more, and typically it's the market. If you think your market is bad, your mindset is actually the problem. You can flip or wholesale houses pretty much anywhere. Every area has its own challenges, but opportunity is everywhere if you're willing to see it." And that's what we're going to talk about today, the opportunity that's out there. And I'm going to show you that you can do this in any market. You're just going to have to decide what that looks like. So today, I'm going to go through a couple things to cover what we're going to do over the next 5 days. But while I'm doing that, what I want you guys to do is my plan today is we're going to analyze markets. I need 3 markets. I need 3 big markets. I need 3 small markets. So by big market, I mean like over 750,000, 1 million people. And then small markets like 350 to 500, 600,000 people, something like that. So start throwing those in the chat because I have a delay and I want all of those markets. I'm going to start writing them down and I'm going to pick some today that I don't know. And I'm going to show you that New York or a little market, it doesn't matter, but we're going to figure out what's best for you. And I'm going to show you how I would go through and analyze those markets. So we'll pick 3 big ones, we'll pick 3 small ones, and we'll work through that to come up with one today that I'll use for the rest of the week. Everybody says, it doesn't work where I am. It doesn't work where I am. It works for him or her, but it doesn't work for me. Lots of excuses, right? Just limiting beliefs. It's a mindset problem. So I'm going to show you exactly the how of all this stuff over the next 5 days. So today, we're going to analyze a market. Tomorrow, we're going to dive deep into pulling a list and how that happens. And I'll talk more about that tomorrow. Then we're going to select marketing channels. We're going to talk about different marketing channels and what works for you and what might not work for you. If you have money or you don't have money, you have time, you don't have time, all those things, what channel should you be using right now that's best for you? And then marketing theory. I'm actually going to go into a lot of marketing theory and ideas about avatars and what we should say and how we should say it and some scripts and some actual, like, what do we put on our postcard? All the questions you might be asking. Or if you're already doing them, maybe some little tweaks that can make them more effective. And then the last day, we're going to talk about deal analysis and exit strategies. That's what we're going to cover over those 5 days. My goal for you is that, like I said, at the end of this, you guys have some marketing blueprint that you can put together to figure out exactly what works for you. So I'm going to talk about, for me, I'm going to talk about lots of different things. So if I had money, or if I had time, or if I didn't have money, or if I didn't have time, that way you're going to fit in one of those boxes. And inside one of those boxes, then you can decide, using all the tips and strategies and things that we talk about today, what's best for you. Today, we're going to pick a good market for flipping and wholesaling. So flipping and wholesaling, I'll talk about some differences. We'll probably, just for the ease of time and all the things that I have access to, we'll probably act like a wholesaler today, but I will jump in and talk about if I was a flipper, this is what I would do. If I was actually flipping houses, I would go this way or that way. And please, as we go along, you can post I probably won't have time to cover all the questions in the chat, but post the questions inside the group, and we'll do our best to answer them over the next week and definitely moving forward. So we'll get the answers to your question. Now what I want to do is big picture. I want to give you some big picture concepts, and then I'm going to jump on my computer and we're just going to dive into some data and some numbers and find these markets. So as you guys are throwing in those markets, please keep that going. I see them going: Hartford, Connecticut, Baltimore, Maryland, Kalamazoo, Michigan, Harris County, Texas, New Orleans, Louisiana, Central Oregon, San Francisco, Olympia, Second Olympia, San Antonio, Tampa, Austin. All right, give me some smaller ones. New Smyrna Beach. Give me some small ones. I need some small ones. There's Colorado Springs, DC, Mansfield, Texas, medium market, Silicon Valley. Okay, Deltona, Florida, Pensacola, Florida. I know that one too well. Florence, Kentucky. Now that's an interesting one. So give me some smaller ones as we go. It looks like we have a lot of big markets. North Carolina, I need more information on that. So, all right, there's some Utah markets and some other things coming in. Cool. Tulsa, Oklahoma. I like that. Let's, Louisville, Kentucky. That's a good one too. I don't know that one too well. All right, so we got all that stuff coming through. Big picture stuff that I want to talk about. As you're looking at a new market or your market, there's step one is, do I invest in my backyard or do I invest somewhere virtually? Or maybe somewhere where I can drive within an hour or 2 hours. So as you're throwing out those markets, most of you are probably throwing out your individual market because you want me to do that, and I get that. But what you should be thinking about is, do I invest in my backyard? So that person from New York that talked to me, or the person from California, or very competitive markets, they say, it doesn't work here. Well, what is around there? And what I would do is I would compare the market that I'm close to, and then I would go look at some other markets and say, okay, what are the benefits and disadvantages of that? And that's what we're going to talk about today. Big picture, supply and demand. Do you remember when you were in like middle school and high school and you're in an economics class or something, you're talking about supply and demand? You're talking about some product that you might create and you're looking for supply and demand, right? So what's the demand for that product? That is our first step. The first step in any market analysis that I do is I say, what is the demand for this thing? Is there a demand? And so if you're a wholesaler, the demand is, are there people who are buying properties for investment? So are there landlords? Are there flippers? Are there Airbnb buyers? Are there new construction builders? What's going on in that area, right? And I'm going to dive into some data here in a second to see that demand as a wholesaler. As a flipper, your demand is different. Your avatar of who you sell to is different than if I was a wholesaler. If I'm a wholesaler, I want to see a lot of cash and off-market or just investment type transactions that are happening on a regular basis. So I want to see that transacting very, very high on a investment property. And I'll show you how you can look at that in the market. So that's step one as a wholesaler. I want to look at the demand. As a flipper, my demand usually comes from retail buyers. So I want a retail buyer. I want a market that is selling a lot of houses on the market. There's a lot of people, maybe it's a lot of people moving there, right? And they're retail buyers that are coming. They're buying off the MLS, they're buying from realtors. So some ways to get that: talk to realtors, talk to some of the highest performing agents, read some of the articles that are happening. Where is the population going right now? There's a lot of methods that you can use to look at that stuff as a flipper. So how many houses are being sold per day? How many people are moving to your city per day? And I would start Googling this stuff. I would reach out to realtors. The reason why I want to focus on the wholesaling thing is because I can get that data right now without calling people. And as a flipper, what I would do is I would want to go talk to realtors. I would want to go talk to maybe some of the city planners. Like, what's happening in my city? Are people building a lot? Talk to some of the builders. Look at the zoning and planning. Go down there. Go to a city hall meeting. There's one right here in Spring Hill tonight. And talk to some of those folks and say, what's going on in our city? Well, they're building like 20,000 houses here over the next 10 years or something. It's crazy what's happening in this city. So go figure out and find that information. That's the demand, right? Is the demand high? What's the time on market on the MLS right now? Is it everything going over asking price? Is it 2 or 3 days? Is it 1 month of inventory, 2 months of inventory? All this stuff that you want to look at to see if there's a high demand for those fixed up, really beautiful, nice houses that you're going to create, right? So that's the demand. Once you see that we have demand, then you want to look at the supply. Well, how many houses are there? If I'm a wholesaler, I'm going to look at blue collar versus like really nice, expensive houses, right? So I'm going to look in that market and say, where's the distress live? Where is all that stuff happening? And that can dial me in to say, from number one, how many people live in that city? How many houses are there? What's the opportunity? How much can I make? If I'm going into a virtual market to start, and I already have a multi-million-dollar company, and I want to go add another $1 million or $2 million, I can't go into a town that only has 20,000 people. I need to go into a bigger city or a place that has the ability for me to grab a market share, right, and take it for my own, and not understand that I'm not going to control 100% of the market share. I'm going to control a piece of it, right? So that's what that supply looks like. So I'm going to jump into the data, but that's big picture thinking of what you need to think about. We'll look at a sub-market and we'll look at a main market. And what I want to do is just talk quickly about the differences. So there's benefits and risks to both of these. And so a main market, a big market, like let's say I'm here in Nashville. We're about 30 minutes outside of Nashville here, but we're in Nashville. I saw like Dallas. I saw San Francisco. I saw some of these bigger markets that are going on in the chat, right? So in there, Indianapolis, I saw Indianapolis. So hot, bigger cities, right? That brings in a ton of people moving, a lot of supply usually, and a lot of demand. But as a new flipper or a new wholesaler, and even an experienced person who wants to go into another market, what you look at these main markets is it's going to be hard. It's going to be more expensive and harder to find a deal because there's a lot more competition. However, so more expensive, more competition. However, when you find one and it's a good deal, you're typically going to be able to sell it really fast and make more money with it. So what I found, I'll give you a quick example. I moved from Pensacola, Florida, which is a market of like 350,000 people, to Nashville. And I was looking to figure out where I go next because I was going to expand into a secondary market. And what I had to do was weigh the pros and cons of this. Nashville was hyper competitive, still is. It would have been very expensive for me to find a deal, probably double what I was already paying. And I knew that I would have to market and I would have to spend money before we would get these deals to come in. So what I said, I weighed the pros and cons of that and said, you know what? I don't really have the bankroll right now to go into a city like this in the volume that I want to go into and risk the fact that we might spend a lot of money and not get enough return. And so I decided that I'm going to go look at some other submarkets around the area. And so I looked at Chattanooga, Tennessee, and Chattanooga, Tennessee was very similar to Pensacola in size, in number of houses, that the way that it was transacting, and people from Nashville were going over there to start investing. So I was here in Nashville. I could start talking to other investors about buying wholesale deals from us in Chattanooga, and it was transacting at a level that looked very similar to Pensacola. So I decided to go into Chattanooga to kind of build up my bankroll, build up the war chest, and then eventually we came into Nashville when I was confident and comfortable with our process systems and the money that we had, the backing. So my recommendation to you guys is if you're new, start thinking about that and looking at that. So should I go into a major market, or should I find a sub-market that could potentially just be like Chattanooga, where it's about an hour and a half from here, that you can just drive over there and there's a lot less pressure and a lot less big money, because here the demand was really high. There was a lot of people buying, but there was also a lot of hedge funds, a lot of people that would just spend money just to find deals. Open Door, Zillow, all the pressure was here. And so I said, well, I'll just go an hour and a half. I'll figure out how to build that out, and I'll start doing deals over there. And we did. We did really, really well, really, really fast, using the same things that we were doing in Pensacola. So in a big city, it costs more money and it's harder to find a deal. But when you get a deal, you can sell it for a bigger spread and more money, right? So there's more risk by laying out that money up front, and getting the money back on the back end is more of a challenge. Now, on a sub-market, a smaller market, as an example is Pensacola, it costs me less to get a deal. It costs me less to find a deal. However, when I go to sell the property and sell the deal, I don't make as much. There's not as big of a demand as if I found a really good deal in, say, Indianapolis or San Francisco. We have people in our 7-figure flipping community in San Francisco that do like 10, 12 deals a year and make millions of dollars. But they're outlaying a lot of capital and a lot of time and things like that to do those deals. And they're much more expensive deals, so they're bringing a little bit more risk into play to make the big returns on the back end. So that's the thing that I weigh all the time. So today, for purposes of time, number one, and for purpose of all of you, I listened to you guys. I watched what you posted in the Facebook group. There's a lot of people in this group that are just getting started. And there's a lot of people who are trying to transition to another market or maybe have done a couple deals or have moved to a new market. I'd like to analyze some smaller markets today. So I definitely don't know them, have never probably heard of them, and I can dive in and show you guys what to look for. And that way, what you see is the outlay of capital might be a little bit easier, and I think it's going to be harder for me. It's going to be more of a challenge for me to analyze a sub-market than it is for me to analyze a major metro market. So I'm going to show you that the same thing would happen if I was analyzing a major metro. So what I want you guys to make sure you've done is you've thrown enough smaller cities in the chat for me to analyze. So something like Pensacola that has under 500,000 people, that's what I'm looking for. I'd like to pick 3 of those today, and we'll go through it. So while you guys are doing that, I have a question. So in a big city, does that make it more advantageous to network and buy from wholesalers, let them bear the expense? Yes, potentially, absolutely. If you have wholesalers in your area, I would certainly be networking with them. If you're a flipper, of course, then certainly networking with them and figuring that out. And also time is your friend there as opposed to money. So if you're going to have to spend a lot more money in a major market if you're marketing directly to sellers, unless you're really dialing in. We're going to talk about how to do that tomorrow, or tomorrow and the next day. And then today, if you're doing that, what you want to do is be networking with realtors, networking with wholesalers, going to look for properties. And if you're a wholesaler, go network, like spend some more time than spend a ton of money in a major metro. But you can absolutely do deals in a major metro. The other thing that I'm going to challenge you to do is look within like 45 minutes to an hour outside of that metro. Instead of right in the heart of the city, start going to look in some of those areas that might not have all the pressure, that don't have 35 postcards on their table every month. And like my house is here around Nashville, tons and tons of marketing is coming to me. But some of my houses in some more rural areas, not as much. So think about some of that. But then you have to look at the demand. Is there the demand there? And we're going to go through that today. All right, Fayetteville, Arkansas. So I'm going to start writing 3 down. I'm actually going to sit down, Andre. We're going to start diving into the data and things like that. So I'm just going to write down some as you guys throw them out. Fayetteville, Arkansas. Never heard of that one. Murrieta, California. Lacey City, Washington. I'm just writing some down here. Lafayette, Indiana. Never heard of that. Tulsa, I'm putting on the side. I think that's a major. Santa Fe, New Mexico is big. Yuma, Arizona. Noonan, Georgia. Interested in that. Noonan, Georgia. Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. Greensboro, North Carolina might be too big, but I'm gonna check it. Okay, so I feel like I've got enough here. Fayetteville, Arkansas. I think that's Arkansas. Murrieta, California. I don't know how to say it. Lacey City, Washington. Lafayette, Indiana. Noonan, Georgia. Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. Cincinnati, Ohio. I'll see what size that is. And Greensboro, North Carolina. So let's kind of mess around with this. And sometimes when you put in a city like that, that's it. Cincinnati Metroplex is over 1.3 million. That's the problem. If you took the city of Nashville and say, okay, what's the city population? You need the major metro. So it's like you'll have a ring, like a ring road, they call it in England, but it's kind of like a beltway usually. And depending on how they structure it, like if you Google just that specific city, you'll see that that's like the dense urban population of the city. But really what you need to do is you need to grab the metro population that's around there. So I'm going to cross off Cincinnati, Ohio, and I'm going to, let's see. I'm going to look at Greensboro, North Carolina real quick because that's an interesting one for me. Okay, it says 291,303. So I like that. I'm going to circle Greensboro, North Carolina. I don't know that very well. I am going to, and I realize you guys can't, here, I'll tell you what, let's share my screen here so you guys can see what I'm doing right now. So Greensboro, North Carolina has got 291,303, and I kind of look at it. So this is where they're kind of pulling the population from. So Charlotte's around their high point, Durham. So this says 303. So let's say, okay, Cincinnati, Ohio metro population. So let's do the same thing for Greensboro and make sure we're not picking a major metro here. 757, I'm still comfortable with that. I think that's last measure for the Greensboro metro. So let's go with Greensboro. It's kind of right on the border, so that'll be a good one for you guys to see if we pick that one. Let's see Fayetteville, Arkansas, 550. What's this near? So you guys can see, I'm just going to be doing a little bit of analysis, and you guys can kind of follow along. Fort Smith, So a little ways away from Little Rock. So kind of between Little Rock and Tulsa. This is interesting. I have no idea about that one. I'm going to pick that one too. Okay, Lacey, Washington. This might be a good one. Let's see where it is. So outside Tacoma, up by Seattle, Olympia. Maybe it'll bring in some Olympia. Let me see Olympia. Okay, let's do it. Let's do Lacey, Washington. All right, so we've got 3 now. And you guys can just go ahead and like plug in whatever it is, whatever other ones that you guys were looking at, and follow along the same thing. So the homework today, I'm going to let the cat out of the bag a little bit, is going to be to do this exact same thing with your market, even if it's just your market, but ideally your market and a couple potential others, so you can see what those look like. So I'm going to start digging into these 3. So let's see, that was like 285. So we're going to dial this down to 1. All right, so we got a smaller one, we got like a medium size metro, and then we got a larger one. So the next thing that I need to do, or that I like to do at least, is I like to read a little bit more about this. So Washington County, there's Fayetteville. Now I want to kind of find where Washington County is. So now I know also that I have Benton County, Madison County, Crawford County, Carroll, and Franklin around it. That's kind of what I'm thinking about now, is understanding the area, these maps, and go Washington County. Okay, Washington County covers most of it. But if you look, if I'm in Fayetteville, I've got this area above Fayetteville that looks like it's populated. This looks like a populated area here. So if I just marketed and started looking at Washington County, I could miss out potentially on all of this market up here. So that's what I was talking about, how I looked at the county map. So I want to look at now at the county above it. So what's the county to the north of Washington County? It's Benton County. So you can, oh, this is a better map. You see this one here? Oh, here. So this has got Fayetteville right in the middle. And so it looks like Benton and maybe even Madison. So I'm going to write down Benton in case I need it. Now I've got Washington County and Benton County on Fayetteville. I'm going to open up another one so we can just bounce back and forth. We're going to go Lacey, Washington. So this one's in Thurston County. So it's going to take me a little bit to get all this stuff. Thurston County, Washington, suburb of Olympia with a population of 42,393. I'm going to take a look at this. So Olympia, I want to know what county Olympia is in too, because we might need to capture that one. So it looks like it could, if I go to Pierce though, I'm going to get all Tacoma. So let's use Thurston. That's a good county map for this one. Okay, so Greensboro, it looks like it's outside Winston-Salem, and Greensboro smack dab in the middle of that sucker. So it looks like we got our 3 counties: Washington County, Thurston County, Guilford County. All right, so now with this information, and I've also got, I got my population, Fayetteville, 550,000, Lacey, 285,000, and Greensboro, 757,000. So now what I want to do is I'm going to go use a tool called ListSource. So a lot of you guys are maybe familiar with it, maybe have seen me do some videos or some of our YouTube videos at 7-Figure Flipping on it, something like that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to log in. So you can create a login for free. This is a tool that I'm going to use today for this. I'm going to use it for free. So I'm not going to spend any money today. Now, if you buy a list and some of the stuff that we talk about tomorrow, I will show you how to pull a list and buy things like that. So, but right now we can do everything that we're going to do today 100% free, and that's what I'm going to show you. So remember, we talked about supply and demand. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to talk about demand for all of these cities. So we want to look at demand. Remember, if I was a flipper, I would potentially use some of this stuff, but what I would use is access to the MLS. I would use more. I'm going to go full screen on me. So I'd use access to MLS. I would use more realtor data, talking to people, understanding the marketplace, going down to the city, stuff like that. Remember, that's as a flipper. So now as a wholesaler, I would be using this because I want to see the past, like what's been going on in the past, the recent past for this. So when I'm in here, I can go create lists. So that's what I'm going to do right now. And what we're going to do is quickly analyze these 3 markets to see what the demand is on the 3, so we can narrow it down to 1 by the end of today. So I'm going to go back to the presentation, and I'm going to go to create my own. So I'm going to try to go as slow as possible, remembering that you can watch this recording in here as many times as you want, okay? But for purposes of time, we have about 22 minutes left. I want to make sure that I get through all 3 of these cities. So I always start with the geography, and in this case, I'm just going to start with a county. But I'll walk you through, and for those who don't know, ListSource is just a data tool. So it's just got a bunch of data from a company called CoreLogic that throws it in here with a bunch of different demographics, property information, mortgage data, foreclosure data, all kinds of stuff, which you'll see. And I'm going to use it to go see what the demand is and what the supply is, frankly, to see which market is going to be better. So I'm going to use county, but you could do lots of different things. You can use the city, you can use the county, you can use a actual map search. So I can actually pull up a map and I can draw a circle around the area that I want to market to, or I want to analyze. In this case, just for ease of time, I'm going to use the county. You can use subdivisions. You can use all kinds. You can use zip codes. I use zip codes a lot, and we will as we get a little further down. But just for rough estimation, I'll use the county getting started. So the first one that I have here is Greensboro, North Carolina. So we're going to go in there, and we're going to analyze Guilford County. So I'm going to click here, and I'm just going to add that to my search. And you can see my count now is at 172,116 items on this list. So in this case, it's houses, condos, apartments, all kinds of stuff, right? So I haven't narrowed it down yet. So 172,000. And just so you guys know, and I know that you can't see it, but here, I have my iPad here, and I am writing down all of this stuff as I go. So at the very top of this sheet, and I want to walk you through this because I want to show you my method. So Greensboro, North Carolina is at the top of my page of paper. And now I'm typing in 172,116, and I'm writing all next to it. And what I'll do at the end of this is I'll take some screenshots of these, and I'll just drop them in the, you guys can see my chicken scratch. I'll drop it in the Facebook group. So I'm going to go back to the presentation, and now I've got everybody. So now I want demand, right? So the demand is landlords and flippers and other people who are buying off-market properties or even on-market properties that are investment properties, right? I want investor buyers as a wholesaler. So I don't really want owner-occupied people. I don't want people that are buying, but I want absentee-owned. I want somebody who doesn't live in this home. Another gotcha here for anybody that's, these three that we have are probably not a big deal, and maybe Lacey, Washington. But if it's a second home, like in Pensacola, one of our problems is Pensacola is a very big second home market. So this absentee-owned property might not actually mean that they were buying it as an investment property. It might just be a second home where they're going to vacation. So if you're in a very popular vacation destination, you need to think about that and start looking at what your data is really telling you. So absentee-owned property, so including property with in-state owners and out-of-state owners, I don't care about that. Trustee-owned, I don't care if it's trustee-owned, that's fine with me. Now, here's the one, corporate-owned properties. So what this means is it's an absentee-owned, and it's currently excluding anybody who owns it in an entity, a corporate-owned entity, like an LLC, right? So the first thing that I'm going to do for this data is I'm going to put no preference, okay? So this is the first piece of data and information that I want. Absentee-owned, so they don't live in the house, and it could be a person's name or an LLC. You see that? Person's name. This would be a person's name if I excluded it. And this would be an LLC if I clicked only here. And so now, the next step is I want to go into property data. So now I'm down to 67,129. I'm still not writing down that number yet because it's not that important to me yet. So property type, I'm going to go single family 1 to 4 residences here. So this is a single family 1 to 4 residence, and I'm going to go to add. Now I'm just going to scroll down through here and show you some other stuff. Residential, multifamily, mobile homes, vacant land, industrial, agricultural, commercial, recreational, some other stuff here. Residential apartments, some things like that that are other options. But we just went from 67,000 down to 35,000. So this is townhouses, duplexes, triplexes, quads, single-family residential, condos, and planned urban developments. So now I am going to write this down. So now I just went from 172,116, and now I'm down to 35,159. And this is how many investment properties. This is all-time investment properties, right? LLC and owners. Still not that important to us yet, because the next thing that I want to do is I want to put last market sale date. Okay, last market sale date, because what this is giving me is all-time number of houses that have been sold during this time period or in this area. So what I want in this case is I want the last 12 months. So I'm going to go add that. Now, here we go. Now we got something, right? 2,591 houses. Okay, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start comparing this to the other cities that I have. Okay, so let's see what the last 6 months look like. So this is 12 months. And then the last 6 months, 1,508. Okay, so the other thing that I want to do now is I'm going to go back to my options before I leave here and put another city in it. Is I'm going to say only corporate owned. So how many were only bought in an LLC? 987. So quite a few LLCs, and there's quite a few personal names. So what I want to point out is if you're doing this to build your buyers list in the past, and you guys are still doing this, don't exclude the owner-occupied personal names, because there are people just buying in their personal names, and they're probably buyers for you. So let's go back to the time frame here, last market sale date. I'm going to remove that, and I'm going to go to last 12 months also, because I want to just check that out. So remember, we had 2,591 the last 12 months. We have 1,498, which is LLC only. So it's about right, about 500 less every 6 months. So the math looks right, nothing strange there. Okay, so I want to go back to the last year. Oh, we have it here. So the last year, and I'm going to go back to no preference on corporate owned. So it goes back up to 2,591. And I want to show you guys one more thing that I'll check before I go onto the next city. So remember, this is the last 12 months. This is 1 to 4 unit residential. This is absentee owned, no preference if it's corporate or personal name. So this is the most number of buyers that we have, 2,591 in the last year. And I'm going to go to purchase list, but it's not going to make me pay for it yet. And then I'm going to click a button right here. So 2,591, and I'm going to click this button, remove duplicates. 2,591 just went down to 1,548. So 1,548, and what this is it's unique buyers over the last 12. So I removed all the duplicate names and duplicate addresses from there for somebody who bought a ton of houses. So what we see is there's 1,548 unique buyers over the last 12 months. So this is an important piece of data. That means that 1,000 of those houses, just over 1,000 of those houses bought in the last 12 months were by the same person who had already bought another one. Okay, so I think you can see why that might be important as we get going, because we want somebody who's going to purchase over and over and over again from us. Okay, so that's Greensboro, North Carolina for now. So, and we also want to remember that it's a bigger city. So let's go to Fayetteville next, then I'll breeze through these next two, because I'm just going to do the same thing. So we might actually have to add Benton in, because that's bigger than Greensboro when we add Benton in, so that might be comparable. So 82,097, we'll work off of this. We'll go to absentee owned. No preference on the corporate, remember. So this is all-time 23,233. And then I want to go into property data. So this one is 993, last 12 months, all. I can tell you what, now that we're in here, let's go 12 months. Only corporate, 362. And now we'll change it to 6 months. So we'll remove that. We'll put in last 6 months. So 6 months is 207, just LLCs. So no preference down at corporate owned. And I know I'm moving fast, but we need to. And I explained it all before. So there's 563. Oh, let's go to duplicates. So we've got the last year, no preference. Let's see how many duplicates we got. Remove duplicates. 993 goes to 830. So what does that tell everybody? So we went from 993 to 830. So remember, we saw Greensboro, North Carolina go from 2,591 to 1,548. So 1,000 repeat buyers. This one went from 993 to 830. So only 160 repeat buyers. Yep, not many repeat buyers, not a lot of big buyers. Could be lots of landlords. Lots of things it can tell us. So we'll dig a little bit deeper. Thurston County, Washington. Okay, this looks pretty good. 103,084 homes sold. Now we're going to go over to absentee. We're going to go to no preference. 27,624 compared to 35,159 in Greensboro, compared to 23,233 in Fayetteville. Again, this number is not extremely important at all, but I just like to look at it because it might tell a story at some point. Okay, property. We want to go to property type, 1 to 4 unit residence, 12,391. We want to go to last market sale date, last 12 months, absentee owned, 1 to 4 unit residences, last 1 year, 770. Let's get LLCs only, 156. Wow. Let's do this last 6 months, 104. Remember, that's this is 12 months. That's LLCs only. If we go to no preference, 431. So we're back at 770, and we'll remove duplicates. We'll see where it goes, 668. All right, so Greensboro, North Carolina had, the last 12 months, 2,591 properties sold in the last 12 months to investors, LLC and personal. Fayetteville, Arkansas had 993, and Lacey, Washington had 770. You can see Greensboro is a bigger place. And for reference also, remember, Lacey is only 285,000. So it's 3 times smaller. So I should expect it to have about 3 times less the number of transactions. Now the question you have to ask is, so 770 versus 250, that's, so you're about 3 times less. Fayetteville is, although we didn't include Benton, so these are probably on par with each other, with just Greensboro having what appears to be more repeat buyers. So you guys tell me what you think we should do. What do you guys want to do? Let's see. Okay, you guys are answering some of the questions. I saw some, I don't understand the part, that kind of stuff. So hopefully I'm going slow enough. How much is a factor? Is price mean media price in a market? Great question. And ultimately, it's not necessarily a factor if you're wholesaling. It could be a factor if you're flipping. If you're flipping, you're going to have to raise more money to flip the house and renovate the property. But if you're wholesaling houses, really, I don't necessarily care about a lot of that. We'll talk about it when we start analyzing, like when you're looking at supply, which we haven't done yet. So we looked at demand. So let's very quickly look at supply, because I think we need that piece of the equation to make a decision here. So let's quickly look at supply. I'm going to go back to just the presentation view, and we might go a little bit over today. I hope that's okay with everybody. But real quick, I'm going to go to, I think we can all agree that Greensboro has a solid supply. I know enough about that city that I can say the supply is pretty good. So let's analyze Fayetteville. Let's see, Washington, we'll go Washington County. So Fayetteville. So this is another piece we need to look at and say, okay, how many houses are available even in this area? So let's just look at basic overall supply data real quick of some houses that I might market to. So this is kind of the next step that I would take. So I want to do the same thing, and let's look at some homes with like a little bit of equity. And so let's look at Fayetteville median home price. Should see it here. Okay, typical home value at 275. Median listing home price 319. Median home price 217. 268. So it's 346. So I'm seeing somewhere in the 275, 217, something like that. Let's just call it 275. Lacey, Washington, 333, 304. Median list price 507, 435, 470. Redfin. Okay. Let's see the 1 year. Right now, July, it's about 468, 475. Let's use Redfin so we can see the same thing. Okay, so Lacey is definitely a more expensive market. So one thing to answer your question that might play into that is the fact that it may be harder for investors to be buying more, and maybe that's why we see some smaller numbers there. So for you guys that, okay, there is no inventory in Fayetteville. So let's look at this. So we've got Fayetteville. So where are we at? Washington. So we're in Fayetteville. We're looking at 1 to 4 unit residential, and we're looking at the supply, right? So we want inventory here. So at this point, I'm also going to look and see, let's just pull some equity. I don't think we need a ton of this other data right now just to get a rough estimate. And let's grab, let's say 70 to 100% equity. We'll add that. And let's look at, so we're excluding corporate owned in this one, by the way, because we're not necessarily, we'll talk about it tomorrow, but I'm just going to exclude it. So no preference right now. We've got 7,636. Just absentee We have 1728. Okay, so this is good information. 7636 and 1728. So here's a rough, and this is 70 to 100% equity. And now I'm going to throw in unknown equity. We'll talk about that a little bit more tomorrow. So there's a ton of unknown data in here. So now I've got 21,033, and I'm going to see what kind of absentee landlords I have. 5,255. So this is 70 to 100% equity plus unknown. And I'm going to do the same thing really quick. I'll just go to geography, and I'm going to change. I'm going to get rid of you, and I'm going to change this to Washington. So while I'm doing this, which one do you guys want me to dive deeper into? Looking at this data right now, as you guys participate, where do you want me to go? Greensboro for the rest of the week, Lacey, Washington, or Fayetteville, Arkansas? Where do you guys want me to go? You tell me, and the votes will win. So this is Thurston County that we're looking for. I can analyze any of these, and I think you can do deals in all three. So let's see, Lacey County, Washington, and this is no preference with our data. So this is 27,056, and we'll go absentee only, 5,081. So this is 70 to 100 and unknown. Let's remove unknown. Let's see what we get. It looks like this give me a problem. I'm going to have to remove it all and then go to 70 to 100. So we're just comparing apples to apples here. So 2,473. I'm just trying to get a comparison of apples to apples. No preference. 13,103. So as far as supply goes, 70 to 100% equity in Fayetteville, I have 7,636 houses. In Lacey, Washington, I have 13,103. But with unknown equity, I have 21,000 in Fayetteville and 27,000 in Lacey. So I kind of want to do this with Greensboro real quick. I know we're almost out of time, but it's going to give us a good, so it's Guilford. Greensboro is Guilford County in North Carolina. So some people are voting for Greensboro, Lacey, Fayetteville, Lacey, Greensboro, 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 Fayetteville, Greensboro, Greensboro, Greensboro. Okay. So North Carolina, and this might satisfy, the cool thing about Greensboro is it might satisfy both the larger market and the smaller market because it's kind of right on the border there. So we've got no preference. We've got 70 to 100. So this has got 19,762 potential houses. If we go absentee only, and remember, guys, this is not something that I'm digging like really, really deep into. This is just the broad scope of what I have available to me. Like this give me big picture ideas. Okay, so this is pretty. It's about what I expected. So I've got 56,650 right here on the screen. You can see this number right here. Actually, I forgot I could write all over this if I wanted to. So 56,650. So this is my world in Greensboro, North Carolina, with 70 to 100% equity and unknown, and owner-occupied or investment property. Now, if I go just to absentee own, you can see that number is 15,582. I had about 5,000 and 5,000 in the other two cities. The other two cities are about a third of the size, so it's kind of what I would expect, right? So all of these, the data is showing me that these aren't too far off. It's just whether we want to look at a little bit bigger or a look at a smaller. So somebody, Jeff, you said Fayetteville, you need to include Rogers. Okay, I looked at Benton, so if I need to include Rogers County, then it might give us a little bit more. So Tony said Las Vegas. Lacey, Greensboro, more investors at the lowest price. Yeah, so it's a great price point. It looks like a really great market, actually. Okay, so a lot of votes for Greensboro, a couple votes for the other smaller towns. How much a factor is? Okay. Let's analyze Greensboro, North Carolina. So we'll go Greensboro, North Carolina for the rest of the week. And I'm going to recap this real quick. I realize that I'm over, and I'm also going to share some of these notes and numbers because you guys can kind of look at them and we can talk about the differences. So I have my chicken scratch written down here. But what I wanted to do today was just give you, and I honestly could spend the next 3 or 4 hours doing this, but you can see how much you can learn over 1 hour. Now, I went fast. So if you guys go back, you can look at some of the things that I clicked on. I didn't dive deep into list source, but tomorrow I will. Like tomorrow, I am going to show you a lot of the different options, like what to do, what not to do. And just remember, this is something that I did today to kind of understand the supply and the demand. As we go further all the way through the week, I'm going to use that tool and a couple others for a lot more kind of data analysis. And really just this is I'm just trying to understand the big picture, the macro view of these markets, and then I'm going to dive deeper. So now all 3 of these, I'll tell you right now, usually when I do this, there's one that I'm like, I'm throwing this one out. There's no chance that I can make money here. There's not a single one of these 3 that I don't think that I would dive deeper in and take a closer look at. Now, I think Fayetteville and Lacey are 2 cities that I would probably not be able to build a multi-million-dollar business there. I think they look a little bit smaller, but there's definitely opportunity and deals to be done there. So, and they might be ones where there's not heavy competition. It might be a little bit easier to find deals. And it looks like that I have enough transactional history in the last year that I can make money as a wholesaler. And now as a flipper, remember, I'm not exactly sure about that. I need to get more information from the MLS, it could just be from Google, could be from the city, could be from a ton of other realtors, even other wholesalers. I would call wholesalers. I would start looking at buyers lists. I would see who's out there, look for RIAs, all of that stuff. So we can go way, way deeper today. But these are the things that I see that are some ideas and reasons why I would pick a market. And honestly, I would go deeper into all 3 of those. But today, in 1 hour, you can see the information. And remember, the first 25 minutes, I was just running my mouth talking. I read you a piece of the book. I told you what we're going to do on this course, these 5 days of this challenge. So what you guys have is you have more time than I just spent to execute what I just did. So you've got about twice the time that I just spent to do that, to do what you need to do. And so homework tonight, what I want you guys to do is look at your market, pick 2 other markets that are either surrounding markets or other ones that you think could be good areas for you to explore. If you're just getting started, go do the same thing that I did and analyze that. Remember, what I did on ListSource, I didn't spend any money today. I just set up an account. You can set up an account for free, and I don't own ListSource, so just set up an account there and just go run the numbers just like I did. Just click around. Use the same kind of criteria I did. If you want to go a little bit deeper, you can. We have some YouTube videos on our 7-Figure Flipping YouTube channel that you can check out where I go a lot deeper. I spend like a full hour and a half analyzing similar stuff where you can see some of the other filters. But today, I want you guys to do that. And then for your homework, I want you to come prepared tomorrow with your market. So, hey, this is the market I'm going to do because tomorrow I'm going to go through, I'm going to say, this is exactly how I'd pull a list. This is what I use it for. This is how I'd set it up. And we're going to actually do it. I'm going to go buy a list tomorrow in Greensboro, North Carolina. I'm going to buy a list and I'm going to figure out what kind of marketing I would do to that area and why, and how I would try to find deals in that area and start building out my marketing plan using Greensboro, North Carolina as the map for that. So you guys pick your market, then you can follow along the next day. You can pull your list in that city. So had fun hanging out with you guys today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have questions, drop them in the chat and let me know if you didn't follow, if there's something that you missed. I went too fast going over it. This video will be in the Facebook group, and I appreciate it. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.
On the next video, I'm going to show you how to get leads, where to look, how to build your list. This was a thing that was so challenging for me when I just got started. How do I build my list? What does a motivated seller look like? And how do I figure out who to market to? So just click the link right here and check out that video.